I'm Jess Dakotas.
And I'm Nick Colziel. Welcome to That Sounds Terrifying, the podcast where we share terrifying stories, we share listener experiences, and we visit virtually some of the most haunted places in the United States and the world. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of That Sounds Terrifying. We are excited, Jess. Why are we excited today?
Oh, because we're going to talk about our ghost hunting experience and
Yeah,
whatever it was, an investigation.
investigation. We were involved in a real life ghost hunt, right?
Yeah.
Paranormal tour slash, interaction extraordinaire with the Monroe County Paranormal Society. So
Yeah.
super excited that they invited us along. They gave us a t-shirt with our name
T-shirts.
on it. I
That
mean,
was
that's
so cool.
unexpected,
Mhm.
grateful. I have worn it about a half a billion times already, which is awesome. So, but yeah, I mean, we thought we'd get together and kind of talk about, our feelings about it, and definitely encourage anyone in the 585. This particular group does do sort of audience participatory kind of events all the time, including, explaining evidence, talking about what they capture, but also the ghost hunts themselves. So definitely we'll put that in the show notes. So if you are in the Rochester area, it is definitely high time for spooky season, and check out their events and upcoming. They sell out very quickly. We were very lucky that we kind of knew a guy. So we got in. But Jess, I mean, what are your initial thoughts about everything?
Um, I was very, I guess, like, for as much as, like, we do this podcast and like I experience things that are like paranormal quite a bit. Like probably more than the average person. I was still so shocked and at a lot of times, like surprised in like such a good way. Um, and I just felt like the energy was really like really good, the vibes were good. And
Mhm.
I don't know, it was such a neat, different experience. And to be in the same room with a bunch of people who like all like at least want to believe in something
Mhm.
is such like a nice experience. I don't
Yeah.
know how else to describe that.
Like you said, I too, like, I've never been on an actual, formal ghost hunt like that. I've been on a couple ghost tours. I've been on a couple self-guided ghost tours that I wasn't supposed to be on in some situations.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was nice to be amongst people who really kind of believed, and also to see sort of a behind the scenes like rendition of like what you see on TV, right? And some of these paranormal shows, there was none of that. What I really liked was there was really not a lot of, you know, shouting out to the spirits to show themselves, and like this built up drama that some of these
Yeah.
shows definitely express.
Yeah. Well, like we talked about before, um, it's not good to walk into somebody's house and start antagonizing them, right? Like that's just rude. You wouldn't do that
Right.
to somebody who's alive. You're not going to do that. Don't do that to somebody who's dead. Um, but let's talk about our experiences because they were really neat. And let's start with upstairs because that's where we started,
Hmm.
right? So when we got there, they handed us these like instruments, right, to
Yeah.
like to utilize. So I had the night vision, or no, not night vision. It was the infrared, right? Like
Right. You had
the heat,
infrared.
yeah,
Yeah.
the heat seeking.
And we were at the Union Tavern, just for those that didn't listen to
Oh
previous
yeah, yeah, yeah.
episodes. So yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
got there and there was a whole bunch of cool toys to try out and play with, basically.
Mm. Yeah, they
Um,
had tarot cards on the table too. And you were like, that's your tool, go for it. I'm like, I do
yeah.
that all the time. I want to do something else. Like I don't
Exactly.
um but yeah, so I had the infrared and like I never did end up seeing anything on there, but it
Yeah.
was still so cool, even when I was facing it at where the ghost was.
Right. Right.
Um, so we were upstairs in the back room that they've literally just opened up for dining. It used to just be like a storage room. Um, and there was a ghost up there, and supposedly, right? I guess
Mhm.
I should say allegedly, there's a
Right.
ghost there. But Rob was there, Rob, who we've had as a guest on our podcast.
Mhm.
Rob Pastilli was there, and he had the K2 meter. Now, the K2 meter is something that like supposedly spirits can interact with, and they can like make it lights up, and they can either
Mhm.
make the light stop or turn on, or like in some cases, like I'm about to tell you, they can make like they can touch it a certain amount of times and
Mhm.
make it light up like one, two, three, whatever. So we were upstairs and we were talking, and Rob had said that this particular spirit does not like to usually talk to him. So if we were up there with him, like this one woman would not speak to him. But then this woman was very chatty.
Mhm.
And they've investigated this house, like they said, almost 30 times. Not house, but restaurant.
Yeah.
Used to be a house.
It was a house at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, 30
So fair.
times. So like they've been there quite a bit. So they know these entities pretty well. Um, but this, I guess this night, this woman was very chatty. But Rob was like, I don't know if I believe that this is her name was Lavinia.
Hmm.
And he was like, I don't know if I believe this is Lavinia because she's actually talking to me. Um, and it was cool because as he was talking, he had the K2 meter and he said, she hates me. And, just being funny. And then this other investigator said, well, she hates me more. So just as she said that, I heard in my head, because I'm a medium, like
Hmm.
I heard a woman say, I absolutely do not. I absolutely do not. And like just and she was like,
Yeah.
I don't hate you, And that was the thing that I got. And I also got like a quick image of her. Um, she was a petite, very tiny woman. Um, but she said that to them and or to me, excuse me, and as I heard her say that, the K2 meter was going crazy,
Right.
like saying like no I don't, like it was a no. um so that was interesting. They were like, oh wow, like that wasn't the right thing, like that wasn't the right thing to say as I heard it. So that was like a
Hmm.
really cool thing for me. Like for me, it was a validation. I know for nobody else would know, but for
Right.
me, it was.
Yeah. I was going to ask you because this came up in my brain and other times you were talking about this, but like,
Mhm.
do you hear, because you've gone abroad and stuff, do you hear things like in different languages come to your mind's eye? Do you hear accents, those types of things?
Accents. I
Yeah.
hear accents, which is so funny because I'm not very good at doing accents.
Hmm.
But I had a friend who had a Portuguese grandfather, and I could hear his accent.
Hmm.
And I was like, he's speaking to me with a very thick accent when he was telling me something. And she was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, he had an accent. I
Right.
was like, okay.
So did you hear
Um,
anything with this particular situation, or is it just
I didn't
okay?
not like
Just
there was no
curious.
accent there. All I heard was I absolutely do not. Like it
Hmm.
was just like that. It was very formal. She was speaking
Right.
very formally. Um, but again, she's, goes from the
Yeah.
1800s. I guess that makes sense. But
Yeah.
she didn't have any accent to it. It was
Hmm.
I guess I wouldn't say she had a typical Rochester accent, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how accents change over time though either.
Yeah.
Um
Fair.
yeah, but no, I will hear like accents and stuff like that. I haven't heard different languages, like nobody's spoken to me, but spirit works so that you can understand them. So I assume if there was a spirit that was talking and they knew they pull from your own category of your brain, right? Like so they know what you know. So
Hmm.
they'll give you references to things. And we can talk a little bit about that later when we talk about the staircase. because
Sure.
that happened to me later that night.
Hmm.
But they use what you know as a reference and they show you images to get their point across.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we were in there talking to Lavinia and she was lighting stuff up. And at one point we asked, I think I asked, how many
Hmm.
spirits are here with you in the building? And the K2 meter went 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just thought that was so cool. And they were like, we
Yeah.
think, and all of us at the same time said, it's four, it's four. Like, because even though she kept doing it, she was pausing
Hmm.
and then doing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. And it was consistent enough that it was just very
Yeah.
obvious and, you know, kind of like I was experiencing most of my stuff through what you're seeing, right? Like you had those feeling that I had, and I'm kind of glad that we recorded this after our episode that just dropped today, where we were featuring another paranormal group because there was a story within what she was saying in Elizabeth, um, that kind of reminded me of my situation. The whole time I just felt ill. Like the whole time I was doing
Sorry.
the investigation, I wasn't feeling good. Um, and it's kind of funny because I don't feel good today, and we talked about that before we started recording.
Yeah.
But so I went through that whole thing, but it wasn't like normal, like what I would associate with like how I felt when I felt like extreme sadness. It wasn't the empathic feelings that I've had
Hmm.
in past situations. But so I don't know if that closed me off from other things, but I didn't have, I had the visual experiences that you're talking about and seeing and experiencing the K2 meter moving and all those different things. So, or lighting up. Um, but I didn't feel like anything was there, like, which,
Hmm.
was strange to me. So, but like, I agree with what you were saying. Like, it was very evident that she was responding or the spirit was responding to the questions that we were asking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was really neat. Um, what other questions were we asking? Do you remember? Because there were a lot of really cool, there were a
yeah.
lot of moments where I was like, no way, no way.
Yeah, we were asking, we were asking a lot about there was a supposed, death that took place, right, on the stairs and asking, was she involved with
Oh,
that?
yeah, that's right.
And, her responses were pretty adamant, like to the point where there was a point where like the investigators like we're gonna have to stop if you don't step away from the meter, like we can't understand and ask the questions, we don't know if you're answering because the light was just going off almost to a
Like
point where
crazy.
like it just stopped blinking, which I didn't think it could do. um but yeah, that was one of the big conversations was around the child who fell down the stairs, and you actually had kind of an interesting feeling about that if I recall correctly, right?
I did. I still have to explore that though. So
Sure.
I'm curious. I guess I can share it, right? Like just
Yeah, just
my
share what your initial
feeling.
thought was, what you kind of.
So my initial, like what I was getting was a woman. So I had asked, it was Lavinia young when she died, and they said no, she was in her 80s. And I was like, okay.
Mhm.
There was a vision of a woman who was like just barely pregnant, like just barely pregnant. Like but I knew she was pregnant, sort of thing. And it was like she might have been the only one who knew she was pregnant, um, or like very tight, close circle. But that I kept getting that, right?
Mhm.
And then they said that they didn't know the age of a different child spirit that was there. Um, and he wasn't the one that fell down the stairs, right?
No, I think it was a woman.
Well, the child fell down the
Yeah.
stairs.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a child that
There,
fell down the
but there were
stairs, but
two children there.
yeah, this wasn't the one. They didn't think this was the same one and the same. No.
Right. So they knew how old Buddy was, and they
Hmm.
offer him like cars like to play with and stuff while they're there.
Yeah.
He's very playful. I'm pretty sure he's the one that turned off our camera when
Yeah.
we, recorded there. Um, very, very playful. But and I got his energy right away.
Yeah.
When I was downstairs, I sensed him immediately. Um, but anyways, I kept seeing this pregnant woman, and my thought was that she had lost that baby that she was pregnant with.
Hmm.
Um, they don't know the age of this other spirit. Um, Lavinia had said that she didn't feel bad about the child dying and falling down the stairs, Buddy falling down the
Hmm.
stairs. Um, they don't know the name of the other child. They didn't know the age of the other child. Um, I asked, I mean, I was just trying to put it all together in my brain, like in real time while we were there, but just from the images I was getting, right, from the
Hmm.
flashes. And so so keep in mind, listeners, we there's two children there. Buddy supposedly fell down the stairs, if I'm getting that correct. I hope I am.
Yeah.
This other child spirit, we don't know their name, we don't know their age. We just and but they think that it's Buddy's brother, correct?
Yeah, I believe that's what they were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but only because they had had other sessions where he said that it was.
Hmm.
But we don't know who Buddy's mom is either. We don't know if Buddy was related to Lavinia. Um, we got some answers there. I think she said that she was related, but like there were some like things that were just not making sense or jiving
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So I kind of just throw it out. But they think that it was Buddy's little brother, um, or something. So, but it's not a proven thing. But anyways, we got downstairs and I picked up dowsing rods.
Yep.
And I will say, I was a little hesitant to pick up those dowsing rods because I was like, I don't know what's about to happen.
Hmm.
They immediately crossed. So, for those not familiar with dowsing rods, they're like these L-shaped rods, and you hold the short part of the L in your hands, and you just kind of let them, do what they're going to do. But when they cross, that means a spirit is nearby. And when they're parallel to each other, they are that means that they're just like static. It's like
Hmm.
the control. They immediately crossed. So I said, "Is there a spirit near me?" And it uncrossed and then crossed again. It's like, okay. I said, are you an adult?" And it didn't cross. "Are you a child?" Didn't cross. "Are you a teenager?" It didn't cross. "Were you ever alive?" And it didn't cross. And I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
I said, and I was like, I got a little nervous at that point.
Hmm.
Um, and God, I'm trying to remember like what else I asked it because I was like, I think I said like, are you a protector?"
Hmm.
And it didn't cross. And then I said, "Are you still here?" And it did cross.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So I put it back, like it put it back essentially, like back to stationary. And then I was like, okay, are you malevolent then?
Yeah.
Um, and it didn't do anything. And then they went the opposite way. They went like
Yeah.
towards
It
me.
went
Do you
out.
remember
That
that?
was
And I was like,
weird.
what the
Hmm.
hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And one of the investigators from MCPI was like, "Oh, that could be like they're giving you a hug." And I was like, "I don't like that."
Yeah.
I don't want you,
Malevolent spirit giving me a
yeah,
hug.
I don't want you to give me a hug if you don't, I don't know who you are. I don't know like what you are. I don't know,
Right.
but it was never the entity was never alive. And I asked another question. I think that was the other thing. I think I asked a different question that I would get a yes or no. Like, so I said, "So you're saying you were never alive?" And then it said yes,
Hmm.
essentially. I wanted to triple check I was what I was getting, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, so it definitely was just like some sort of entity that was
Hmm.
never alive. Um,
Yeah.
so then I'll go back to the fact that there's another child spirit there. We don't know how old it was. We don't know anything about it. But then I kept getting those flashes of that woman who was pregnant. And so my personal theory, and this is just a theory and not at all in any way, shape, or form proven in any
Right.
way, and I can't validate it in any way yet, or invalidate it for what it's worth. But I am wondering if it was that miscarried child, um, that potentially, had, grown up on the other side, because there have been cases that I have heard of that unborn children can still grow up on the other side.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe it decided to stay as like and present as a child. It's just a soul, right? We're all souls.
Right.
So if you ascribe to something like that, that sort of belief, it makes a little bit more sense that this child would say, "Hey, I was never alive," but it's still a child entity. Um, maybe it's hanging out with Buddy because he's there and the
Sure.
baby, soul grew up to match his age. Who the heck knows? But yeah, that means it was never alive. It has no age. And that woman flashing in my head being pregnant, um, but only just pregnant would make more sense.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. It didn't feel malevolent. It didn't feel like malicious in any way, shape, or form. Didn't feel negative.
Hmm.
Um, it was just something that was a little, like, huh, hmm, something I
Yeah.
want to go back and ask more questions about for
Yeah.
sure.
No, I think that that'd be, important to kind of follow up. And we that was the first thing we said, I think, when we got out of there.
Yeah.
It was like, we want to go back, we want to do it again. And it
Yeah.
was funny because like I picked up some of the equipment, like the dowsing rods and stuff like that earlier on, and they just didn't seem to do anything for me. So I recorded, with my own phone, just audio recordings, which I have gone through a little bit and listened to. I haven't heard anything yet. I need to kind of, again, like we talked about this even I think in the previous episode, I need to get in a really quiet environment to do that, and I just haven't found that. And there were a couple of distinct points where I remember no one was talking, but I did see the audio level pop up on it. I didn't like screenshot or mark where that could have been or when that took place.
Hmm.
But so I have to listen to everything, a couple times to kind of get it. But um, most of my experiences with what you're talking about, like upstairs and on the stairs and things like that, were, observing the K2 meter and, feeling pretty freaking ill. Um, so um but there was another point where we went downstairs into the basement, and I know we had a pretty long conversation down there, and I'd love to hear sort of your perspective on that, because the one entity that we started talking to or talking about, um again, had no name, but we were thinking, because this is also a place where people were kind of snuck out of or into, like,
Hmm.
different situations, because it was actually owned by a pirate, and that's proven. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
sneaky things going on, but there was that maybe even the assumption from Rob that this one spirit could have been, maybe it was you that said it could have been like, an African American slave trying to escape, and they didn't really always have their true name. So
Yeah. So it wasn't me that said that. They had asked this
sure.
little child. They said it was a girl,
Hmm.
um, for their name, and somebody else had said that they didn't have names then.
Yeah.
Because they would take on the names of um their owners,
Right.
and but yeah, that this little girl was just waiting to get through the tunnel to get to
Yeah.
freedom.
And the tunnel was interesting too, because Rob talked a little bit about how there was a parking lot project across the road that had been, developed and dug out, and they found tunnels underneath that where that parking lot was. And so there's a good distinct possibility that, like in the previous episode, we talked a little bit about that tunnel too, where there's a bricked section, and we'll put a picture up so people can see what we're talking about, where it's very obvious that it looks like there was a doorway or a small tunnel kind of space in that area. And they were showing like activity on the K2 meter in that hole, that area, but not above it. And then he would take it and he would put it like basically on an electrical line to show like how much activity that causes. And then he put it against another section of wall. There was nothing. Another section of the wall, there was nothing. And but then in front of that space again, it would start flickering and showing that there was sort of energy where on a wall there shouldn't be, right? It's a brick wall. It's not a, you know, a wall that has electrical lines behind it or something. Um, but the other thing was like touching the top part of the wall and then touching the tunnel part of the wall. There was, supposedly a
Yeah.
totally different temperature. And did you feel that?
Um, I didn't go over to touch it. Uh, but watching Rob put the K2 meter right near the tunnel, supposed tunnel, and then against the separate part of the wall, and then
Hmm.
back over to the tunnel, and then back to the wall. And there was like it was going crazy at the tunnel and then dead at the wall. And
Hmm.
then like he put it over at the electrical box and it went crazy because it's supposed to, right?
Yeah,
Like because it's reading the EMFs. And then he went back to the tunnel where it should go crazy again because it was going crazy there. Because I was like, well, maybe there's a wire, or like
right.
maybe there's like some electrical in there. And it was dead. There was
Yeah, oh yeah, that's
nothing.
right. I forgot about that
And then
part.
he went back to the electrical box and it was going crazy again. And then he went back to the tunnel and again it was dead. There was nothing
Mhm.
there. And I was like, what is happening?
Right. Yeah, it was crazy. And so the first time we were there and we got the tour from Kelly, I did touch the wall in both parts, and there was a distinct difference in temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, someone ahead of me touched the wall, and this is this time now at the investigation, touched the wall. And he was like, yeah, there's a distinct difference in temperature. But when I touched it, there was no difference. Like it felt the same to me, which was a little weird. I'm like, and it kind of just went along with the theme of like Nick is not allowed to experience anything in this investigation except for what he's seeing with his eyes through the technology and stuff. Um, but it was just that was kind of weird to me because like then they went back and I'm like, oh, I don't feel a difference. And then they went back and did it again, and they said, oh no, there's a difference. So I don't know, it was just my hand was broken at that point and just didn't feel heat or what it was, but I didn't feel
No,
anything there. And
no.
then we went and joined Rob again, and he was sitting on that cooler.
Yes, yeah.
And he was talking again and using the K2 meter, and that was a pretty interesting interaction there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So, I mean, nothing really happened on the outside, but I was getting info.
Yeah.
So there we went over because again, we're in a restaurant, but we're in the basement where they keep like the cooler is down there, like the big walk-in freezer. And then there was a cooler in there with I don't know what was in there. Do you remember what was in there?
Yeah, it was like frozen like appetizer type things and
Yeah,
stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. It was like a deep
Yeah.
freezer. And
He
then
was
we were
afraid to
right.
open it. He's like, I don't know what they store in here. Hopefully it's not a
Yeah.
dead body. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a different type of tour.
Yeah. But then we were right next to the room full of spirits,
Yeah.
like actual like imbibing spirits, like all the
Yeah.
bottles of everything were in
Yes. The
there.
best spirits.
Yeah, I took a picture of our friend John in there once, and I
Yeah.
was like, John with spirits at our event a year ago that we
Yeah.
launched our
Yeah.
podcast at. Um, but Rob was asking this guy to clink the bottles or knock on the freezer or something,
Something. Yeah.
and I heard a man in my abilities with my abilities
Hmm.
say like I'm not I'm not in the circus. I don't perform. I'm not a circus. I'm not a monkey. I'm not a
Right.
monkey in the circus. And like over and over really loud. I'm not a circus monkey. I'm not doing that. Like
Yeah.
very adamant and he kept saying I'm not in the circus. I'm not in the circus. And I didn't
Hmm.
share that at the time because like how do you prove that? How do you validate that? So, I mean, that spirit was interacting a bit, but not as much. But apparently, this man was somebody who owned it or ran
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
in the 60s. And he was known for being like just kind of hippy dippy, but also like obnoxious.
Yeah. Like he
And he
rode
would
that
ride
dumb waiter. Yeah. Go
dumbwaiter.
ahead.
He would ride the dumbwaiter up and down, butt naked.
We didn't
um,
witness that. That was a relief.
No, no, yes. Yeah, we didn't see
No
any
full
naked
body,
ghosts.
yeah, no full body
Full,
apparition of the
full
naked
body nude
ghost and the
apparition.
dumbwaiter. No thanks.
Um, that would be funny if there was like a nudist club or something and like it was haunted.
Oh my God.
Like,
That would actually would be haunting. The
that would
whole
be
the
really
whole
funny.
concept is haunting to me.
I would. That would be hilarious. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Different
maybe
podcast, Jess.
yeah, I mean maybe we go investigate that. Like it's not like beach. It'd be so funny. It used to be a nudist beach and now it's just like for like and it's a amusement park and
Yeah.
we keep seeing these naked ghosts. It's horrible.
That's a very niche,
Yeah.
terrifying ghost paranormal podcast. The
You know what?
naked
I want to be the first to discover that. That'd be so funny.
that would be
Some
that
like
would
naked
be
old man
oh
ghost.
my God. I would love to have the experience that I had where I was just sort of dead to the senses on that one because I don't
Yeah.
need that. That would be our
Um,
luck though. That would be my luck. When I get
mm,
to see the ghost, it's an old man naked ghost.
old wrinkly man ghost.
Just
Um,
all right.
anyways,
We're in the
so
weeds.
I know, but it's funny. I hope our listeners enjoy that. If not,
Yeah.
fast forward or
Yeah.
whatever, turn us
We're
off.
almost to the stories, I swear.
So yeah, so I mean that was an interesting one in some regards, and others it was just quite excuse the turn of phrase, but quite dead down there
Yeah,
when we went over that way.
it's true.
But then we headed upstairs towards the end of the night,
Hmm.
and where the stairs are, um, as if you've listened to our podcast before, you'll know, or maybe I'll just jog your memory a bit, that
Hmm.
the stairs are where a little boy fell and was killed, and supposedly, I don't know if they have,
Yeah, and they did explain that it changed a little bit too, because like
yeah,
stairs that are in the picture that I'll
yes,
share again
are
wrap,
different. Yes.
and they kind of go around the corner.
Mhm.
And it was unclear if that changed because of how you know, that it became another restaurant and did they redecorate around that, or as a result of like the
The
stairs were
child
just one
dying.
straight fall basically.
Yeah.
So maybe if you change that, you don't get
It
hurt as
would be a
much.
very high fall for
Yeah,
that for a child.
yeah. If it's just
Um,
one straight down
but I
two
still don't know if
stairs.
that's a proven story or not. Like if
Right.
they like have that legitimate, like this is how I don't know. But it has been said, and actually our friend, her daughter was running down the stairs, and Kelly shared this on our podcast.
Yeah.
And our friend's daughter was running down the stairs and almost like was going full speed and then just was slowly pulled back when she was about to like basically go over the railing to
Hmm.
like um and they all watched it happen. Like she was just
Yeah.
slowly pulled back, set down and fine. And that's happened to multiple people where they almost tripped and fell down the stairs and they felt something literally pull them to safety.
Right.
Um so they think that that's the little boy who just kind of monitors the stairs.
Yeah.
But his name is Buddy, like I said, and Rob was giving him some cars and he was like, "Do you want the red car? Do you want the blue car?" And somebody upstairs was doing a I don't even know what it's called. He couldn't
Hmm.
see or hear. He only think he had headphones on that
Yeah.
like it was feeding
Radio
words.
wave, radio
Yeah,
waves,
yeah, radio
basically.
waves. And he heard somebody say blue at the exact same time that Rob had asked the
Yeah.
child. And he was totally without, like, not within earshot. He couldn't have heard Rob ask, "Do you want
Right.
red or blue?" And somebody said, "He just said blue. He said blue." And like then it like
Mm.
transferred from the guy who was doing it to somebody else to Rob to say, did blue? Does blue mean anything?" And they were like, "Yeah, he wants the blue car." But then like so this kid, so this is where if you remember earlier in the episode we were talking about um the that ghosts will or spirits will use and reference what you have and what you know. So this was the child, so Rob was asking, "Do you want to play a game?" Our game. He had the K2 meter again, and this kid, he plays with, basically you hold up some fingers behind your back, like somebody
Hmm.
across the room will hold up their fingers across their behind their back, and then he says like, "Okay, touch the light. How many fingers are they holding up?" Nobody else can see it but the spirit, this
Hmm.
child. So he asked who he wanted to play with, and I knew that the kid was going to say me. I heard him already like saying my name. So
Hmm.
I knew he wanted to play with me. because he was like, "Do you want to play with Nick? Do you want to play?"
Yeah,
He
he's
was
like,
like,
no.
"No." He was like, "No." Do you want to play with, so and so? No. Do you want to play with so and so? No. Do you want to play with Jess? Yes, 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 yes. And I already knew. So I hid my hands like behind my back, and I think I put up a two. And he was like, "Okay, go look." And how many fingers is Jess holding up behind her back? And the kid said three. And he was like, three? And I was like, no, there's two. But it was very clearly saying like one, two, three. So we were definitely interacting. It's not
Yeah.
like there was just, like nothing. Um, and he said, okay. He was like, well, that's weird. He's like, do it again. So I held up one finger and behind my back, and the kid went back and did one, two, three, four.
Hmm.
And he was like, four? And I'm like, no. And then he was like, try again. And it did one, two, three, four.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, I have one finger up, and everybody's like, oh, like, do you have like your thumb up or whatever? Like, yeah, I was like, no, no, like, so what I was getting the impression of was that this child was being a child,
Hmm.
which was he brought to mind my son. And my son, we call it being schmooky, like
Yeah.
you're being a little schmook, he was being silly. So
Right.
he was counting, I'm gonna count the fingers behind your back that you have down and report that,
Right.
instead of like doing what I'm supposed to do, which, like putting my finger, like telling you what fingers are up. Um, so he was being a child. He was
Yeah.
being a little kid. And all I kept thinking of was like my child and the way that he is, and how like he can, he'll just be a little silly. That's what little boys and girls do,
Yeah.
they just got that, that's what kids do. And that was the distinct impression I had, that he was referencing my son. He knew I was a mommy. He knew I was a mommy to somebody that was around his age.
Yeah.
So they think that Buddy was like around like 10 or 11 when he died, but I had the impression that he was younger.
Hmm.
Um, quite a bit younger, like
Yeah.
6.
When you were first doing that, just like you knew you were going to get picked, I knew I wasn't going to get picked. That was the
Mm-hmm.
only thing I was sure about.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I initially thought when you were holding up, I think you said two initially
2.
fingers.
Yeah.
So something like if you hold up these two,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm holding up my pointer and kind of in my middle, in Europe and in France in particular, I think it is like they start counting with their thumb.
Mm.
And so I was thinking, well, maybe he was thinking three because you were holding up like the Americanized like two,
Mm.
peace sign kind of things. But
Mm-hmm.
then when you did it again and it was four, I'm like, all right, I got no explanation for that. Other than what you said, and I totally agree. I think, he was being a bit cheeky and
Yeah.
fun and
Yeah.
maybe even playing off like of like the other person downstairs, the other spirit that was saying,
That's
I am not.
I'm not your
Yeah,
yeah.
sir. Yeah, I'll show you. Like you're trying to,
Yeah.
get me to do something I don't want to do. So,
Yeah. And I think
so
that that's as I was just retelling it, I had that exact same thought,
right.
that maybe he was, they were doing the same thing. Yeah, maybe he
Just to
was
be,
down there with us.
to have fun and like
Yeah,
you said, they've
like
been there about 30 times and it's about the time to turn the table on you a little bit, right?
right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, it was really such a different and cool and fun experience. Um, I said a little prayer so that I didn't take
Yes.
anything home.
Yes.
However,
Oh,
when I got home that night, my dog, who is blind in one eye,
yeah.
like can't see, and like, she can hear, we think, but she's probably like not the greatest at hearing, would not go to sleep. I
Yeah.
got home, I got in bed, I was exhausted because we didn't get home till like, I didn't get home till midnight. You get home at like 3 a.m., but
It's a little bit yeah,
yeah.
closer to 132, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you live
live
much
further
farther
away.
away.
I live in the
Yeah,
boonies.
yeah. Yeah, you live way far. Um, but I got in bed and I was utterly exhausted. I just wanted to go to sleep. And Lucy was growling and barking and jumping off the bed. And I was like, oh, she's like, gotta go outside. She's gotta go potty. So like my husband brought her outside and she like did nothing.
Right.
Came back inside, put her on the bed, and she's like, grr, grr, and she's
Yeah.
growling, and she's looking right at me, and I'm like, oh no, I
Mhm.
brought something home. So I was like, you need to leave. I don't know who you are, but you gotta go. You gotta
Right.
go. And it took a little bit before it did, and
Right.
before she finally settled, but she was not happy. Um, so I have to do a better job, I guess, of like praying that away,
Yeah.
like, and just being like, putting white light around myself and being like, nothing can follow me home. I was very adamant. Even in my car, I was like, nothing can follow me home. And I kind of felt like the presence of something. So I was like, "Ee." But I
Yeah.
also feel like it might have followed me home because I almost feel like I'm on the right track with that child never being born thing.
Sure.
And it almost was like a you got it sort of thing. But
Yeah.
again, I have no validation. I do not know. I feel like the more answers I got, the more questions I had. Um, and so, maybe we will get more
Yeah,
information
we should go
when we
back
go
and
back.
ask some of those specific questions and see what we can do. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely, like you said, I enjoy the experience. Um, I definitely want to go back. I definitely want to try to do a little bit more and get more involved.
Hmm.
Uh, and hopefully I feel a little bit better. I will say that like it wasn't instantaneous, but as I drove away, I felt better and better. So I don't feel like it was anything, like I was sick or something. And two unusual things happened that, not really paranormal, but I was wide awake the whole way home, which I struggle. I'm older now. Like I
Hmm.
struggle these late
Hmm.
night drives and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so that was a little unusual that I didn't need to stop, grab a coffee or, 5 hour energy or something crazy.
Hmm.
But so there was that. But then I also didn't dream that night. And I always dream that if I don't have a dream, it's kind of weird. Like it may be something stupid, like, dream about like grasshopper, like not grasshopper, but a cricket cricketing my ear or something like that. I always have something that I recall from
Hmm.
my slumber, and I didn't that night. And I just remember that being pretty distinct.
Nice.
So just nothing, again, nothing probably paranormal at all, but it was just my senses were all kind of out of whack that evening, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Um, I wonder if you were just so sensitive like I was in that building where I didn't feel good,
mhm.
and then you had the same issue.
Right. And going back to what, in a previous episode, I just didn't put one and two together and think about that as like I knew that it was probably related, that's why I was kind of getting blocked somehow, or maybe it was just too much
Hmm.
energy, but I didn't feel that way. And I've been in that restaurant, I don't know,
A
three, four
bunch, yeah.
times, and I
Yeah.
never felt that way before. The
Yeah.
first time when we had our show open, like I did have, more of a physical experience with like going into the bathroom, the water's running,
Hmm.
right? And no one was like in there before me or anything like that. I didn't hear it running when I was going in, but then it was just
Right.
on, right?
Um,
So yeah, but yeah, overall loved it. Big thanks to Rob and
Huge.
the
Yeah.
the
That was
team.
so cool. Yeah.
Definitely would
So,
do it
so
again if they
cool.
have us.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It was
So
so neat. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a cool experience. So, we will update everybody if we do end up going back,
yeah,
when we do end up going back.
exactly. I'm sure we will. So Jess, I think you have a story to share, right?
I do. Well, so this is a Reddit story. And it was under Ask Reddit, and it was, what are your real life ghost stories that you like to tell on dark and stormy nights? So somebody said, something invited itself into my friend's home. I've told the story on another subreddit, but this is one haunting experience that really freaked me out. When I was younger, I had a next door neighbor named Lexi, and she was my best friend. Our parents would go on trips on motorcycles with each other, and we would camp out at one of our houses until they came back. That's scary enough to me. I'd be terrified if my parents were on motorcycles. Oh my God, I wouldn't
My
sleep.
dad's been a rider for years,
See,
ever since he got out of the service.
I'd have such anxiety. Anyways, that's me. Back to it. It was normal for us. We never had any paranormal events prior to this specific night. We were sitting in our bedroom. our bedroom, the bedroom, yeah, talking and doing what we normally did. We saw a bright light through her window, followed by the sounds of motorcycles pulling into the gravel driveway. We instantly thought, okay, our parents forgot something. But before we could even get up to leave the bedroom, we heard a knock and a soft woman's voice say, "Hello?" The front door opened, and this was a familiar sound because the door scraped against the hardwood flooring. We panicked, thinking that there was an intruder at this point because this woman didn't sound anything like our families. We have very Texan voices. We scouted the house, scared out of our minds, just to find the front door wide open and nobody in the driveway. Nobody was in the house. We finally felt better. We walked back into her bedroom, but before she went to enter, she collapsed onto the floor and started sobbing. I didn't know what was happening. I was scared, and she told me something as tall as the doorframe was standing in her parents' room. After our parents returned, her family continued to have paranormal activity in their house until they moved out.
I would move out quick.
I'd move out too.
I would call Jess Dakota's realtor,
Yeah.
right?
One of the comments on there is just a very quick thing that says, several years ago on New Year's Eve, me and my wife and brother and a bunch of her friends rented a cabin. On New Year's Eve, a very tall person walked into the cabin and looked at me, then walked into the bedroom and vanished. I saw him, my brother saw him the next day, and none of the girls could see him though. Scared the crap out of both of us. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah. So have you ever had a situation where your parents left and you thought you're like, that's cool, but then you thought they came back?
Um, so I used to wake up in my house that I grew up in, and I think I've shared this before. Um, and I would always think, because my mom would watch the news in the morning in the kitchen. We had a TV in our kitchen, and our kitchen
Hmm.
was this big, long room. It was it's so weird, but it was like an addition on the back of the house. They expanded the kitchen.
Hmm.
Um, and so my bedroom was on the first floor because it was a Cape Cod, and I would hear in the morning, every morning that my mom was home, the news.
Yeah.
Um, and I would smell toast or whatever she was making, usually toast. And so one day it was a school day, and I think I didn't have school, but my mom had work still. So I got up and like actually this happened quite a bit. Probably a handful of times that this happened to me. And I got up and I walked out in the living room and I'm like, why is she home? That's weird because it was like 8 a.m. or something. And I was like, that's so strange. And I smelled the toast and I could hear the TV on. I was like, she just left the TV on, you know?
Hmm.
But I thought I like heard somebody in the kitchen too. So then as soon as my foot hit the threshold from the living room into the kitchen and I could see in the kitchen, everything went quiet. But the entire time I was walking out from my bedroom through the living room, I could still hear the TV and
Hmm.
like somebody was in there. And I literally like the threshold, I hit the threshold, nothing, silence, dead.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and I would be like, that was weird. That was real weird. And like I would try not to be scared of it. Lots of weird things happen in that house. So
Hmm.
many. But yeah, that was what came to mind with this.
Yeah. So what came to mind with the motorcycle story, part of the story is, like I said, my father rode for years, still rides, right?
Yeah.
And one day I was homesick from school. And so my mom was at work, my dad was at work, and I heard a very loud like motorcycle sound, and then like a big vibration in our house, like a big boom vibration.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I wasn't concerned about it, but I knew the sound was off. It was not normal, but I was super like excited to, because I thought it was my dad. My dad's home. So I went running to the door and I flung it open. And at the bottom of our steps was this man. And he was like picking up a motorcycle. He had lost control and just went straight into our banister and like bent this metal wrought iron kind of railing. Um, and he was looking straight at me and through me, kind of a thing. He was scary looking dude. And he like picked up his motorcycle and turned around and like rode off. So I like was, freaked out. I didn't know what to do. It was before
Mhm.
cell phones, all that stuff, right? Um, and so, but I did notice a car kept coming back and looking, and it was, similar looking person. You just couldn't see. It was like, but anyways, I told my dad and my mom when they got home, and they ended up calling the police, and the police tracked the car down because I took down the license plate and
Hmm.
it said, oh, this kid's pretty sharp, and but it was a crazy experience and terrifying for like, someone was like, I think I was 11 or 12 maybe
Yeah.
years old. But nothing really came of it. There weren't like he just called because you know in this day and age, someone rides their motorcycle into your property, they might sue you for getting hurt.
Right.
So, but that's what I thought of when you told that story, and that would be creepy. That I would move to. Someone standing this bigger than the threshold right in their shadow figure. Yep,
Yeah.
out.
I don't know. I
But
just thought it was a nice, quick, creepy story.
yeah, well, I think it is about that time, Jess. So.
Oh, it is that time. So
Without
whether
further
it is,
ado.
yeah, whether it is a hard seltzer or ghosts, keep your spirits up.